Hey guys, how you doing? This is jpsarrireviews coming to you once again with another book review. And I want to review today Alpha Flight. Here on the side, you can see, of course, the Alpha Flight by John Byrne. Pretty nice looking art. Here in the back, you can see all the books, Canada's Greatest Heroes Take Flight. Now, when you remove the dust jacket, you can see right here, there's an introduction, Heroes of the Great White North. And here you have pretty much a bio of all the creators. The art, in this case, the binding, it's just pretty much the same as the one in the dust jacket, but without the lettering. The thing on the side, the binding on the side is the same. Love this one in the back, very classic. Now, going inside the book, you can see that introduction, Alpha Flight by John Byrne. You see Sasquatch versus Wendigo. And of course, you got the list of all the people involved in the process. You got writers Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Roger Stern, Tom DeFalco, Bill Mantlo, Louise Simonson, Ben Rabb, and John Cassaday. Now, on the pencilers, you got John Byrne, Sal Buscema, Steve Ditko, Ron Wilson, Paul Neary, Paul Smith, Mike Mignola, and John Cassaday. And here you got the contents. If you notice this, there's some when you go in the beginning, it has all the X-Men stuff, all the stuff that was before the Incredible Hulk, Machine Man, Marvel 2-in-1, and then of course Alpha Flight starts, and then go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 8, all the way to to actually number 11, and then restarts again. I don't know if you can see it from that distance, but it starts again. It goes again 2 to 3. These actually are excerpts that were on the original comics, that they were just the origins. At the beginning of the story, you got the first part of the story, and then you had a second story, which is an origin story of each character. So all of that, the way they did it in this omnibus is they didn't want to have it just all together like that, because it could be a bit confusing for the reader, or at least it kind of cuts the tension of the when you're reading. So what they did, they put him back in the beginning, so it gives the introduction after Alpha Flight 1, which is that pretty much the first issue, and many of these characters are introduced for the first time, and then it goes into all the introduction excerpts, so that way you know exactly who they are, where they come from, and then goes back again to number 2 and continues on all the way down. And this is a classic cover. This is the X-Men 109 Uncanny X-Men, well, X-Men 109 Uncanny X-Men, and I love this one. And this is, of course, Weapon Alpha, who then becomes the Guardian. Well, technically it was the Guardian and then the Vindicator. It's always been confusing the way they did it. The first name that John wanted to name him, Guardian, and that's to me always been his name. But because Marvel kind of didn't like the idea of the name for some reason, they named him Weapon Alpha and then the Vindicator. But when he created the story, when he started with the first issue of his whole solo run of the team, then he put the Guardian name back. And to me, that's always been the Guardian name. And I have always loved his suit. So this is a nice one. I like here the art. So there's a couple of crossover stories that you have seen in other omnibuses. So this is the Uncanny X-Men, and of course this is Claremont's writing and Byrne's art. Magnificent art on the X-Men, as you can see. And I love this, Lilandra, Gladiator. Always one really nice character. I always love the Gladiator. Love the character. Super powerful. And very cocky for sure. But here you can see Weapon Alpha introduced, trying to pick up Wolverine. I can tell you one thing, and if people ask me who is your favorite artist, I would say there are many artists that I love and some artists that I don't. But if I have to choose between artists, my favorite, of course, I would say Jim Lee in the 90s. But to me, perhaps the one that has been more influential in comics, and the one that I love the most as a creator, has always been, in this case, John Byrne. And I've said this many times before throughout my videos. If you follow my channel, you know that I love John Byrne. And I admire him. Like many people, I admire him. Have great fun memories of my childhood because of stuff that he did with a lot of the characters that I love. Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and so on and so on, the Avengers. But definitely, and Superman too. So there's a lot of things that he did, that he still do, that to me are so classic, so iconic. And yeah, I love the design of Jim Lee. But I would say the second design for, I would say for any of these characters on the X-Men, of course, is in this case, John Byrne. And I love the way he depicts Wolverine. I love his Wolverine. Now here you can see the team when it's introduced: Shaman, Aurora, North Star, Vindicator, Snowbird, and Sasquatch. Love the team. Definitely love the concept. But they're confronting the X-Men. They're trying to get Weapon X, which is in this case Wolverine, trying to bring it back to Canada. And that's pretty cool. I love this. You know, during those years, he gained so much popularity. You can see king size annually, The Incredible Hulk. This is a battle between Sasquatch and, in this case, the Hulk. But this is it was written by Roger Stern and John Byrne, the story, but it was drawn by Sal Buscema. And also Alcala, he did some of the art. I love Alcala's art, but I wouldn't say that he's the best inker, at least not for Buscema. And if you know Buscema's art, you know his classic depiction of the Hulk. It's so iconic. You know, it's just, when you think about the Hulk, you have to think about Sal Buscema. What I like about this collection in particular is the fact that you get all the stuff that was pretty much the characters, everything that happened prior to the run. You get a big chunk of it. I love this here. That's the classic Buscema's depiction of the character. Love it. But you know, he, in this case, I'm sorry, not here, but they were able to get everything. Marvel was able to get everything that was prior to the, in this case, Alpha Flight, the original run. They were able to bring it all together. And here you can see writer pencil of John Byrne in this section, and it's Joe Sinnott, the great Joe Sinnott, doing the in this case the inking. Very cool. And this just 10 little section, which is pretty cool. Love Joe Sinnott's ink. Very classic. Now here we have the other issue from the Uncanny X-Men, issue 139, the introduction on Kitty Pryde. Very cool. John Byrne and Terry Austin. Love Terry Austin inks. Terry is an amazing inker. Now, many times, a lot of people, I see in some even videos where people always talk about Terry Austin, and you know, when they interview Terry Austin, and always the mention is, oh, this is the guy that used to ink for Jim Lee. So it's like, for some reason, Terry Austin is kind of put on the side as like he's just a shadow of Jim Lee. But to be honest, before even Jim Lee was a name or was somebody in comics or even had a chance in comics, Terry was already doing inking. He was a really major inker. He was a name. He was inking some of the best artists of the time. Man, these inkers are amazing. And yes, you can say that Jim Lee is a fantastic and phenomenal artist, but Terry is the one that has been there with him all along as a great inker. I think they make a really nice team, but make no mistake, he was already in the business and he was already a name in the business. The classic design of in this case Wolverine, and the introduction of Wolverine and the first fight that he had with, of course, Wendigo, and they have a fight with the Hulk. Love that story. Recently it was that Marvel Legends, they released the 50th anniversary or something, 80th anniversary of Marvel, I'm sorry. They released this new toy line, or this new pack of action figures. Pretty cool, really resembling all the classic art. Now this is another classic cover, 140, you know, with the brown suit and all that, and Wendigo. Love this cover. It's one of my favorites. Fist to fist with the Savage Fury of Wendigo. I love that. Love the art again. Terry Austin, again, doing this stuff, his stuff, doing great. There's something about John and his style. It's just amazing the way he does. Some people might say that a lot of the characters, they look very similar. The faces, the women look the same, and you can say that for every artist. Every artist have the same thing. Every artist had the same style. You can see that every character of Jim Lee looks the same in many ways. Every character of Adams looks the same. And that goes for every other artist. You know, they have the same thing. Now, this is Steve Ditko right here on this one, which is very cool. The great Steve Ditko. I love, you know, a lot of the stuff that Ditko did, you know, very classic stuff. So if you like, what's the part what I like about this book is that it's so eclectic. There's many artists also here, but it never loses steam. It never feels like like sometimes some omnibuses, you feel like the art is all crammed together. A lot of different arts that goes up and down, but you don't feel like that. Yes, I would say that my favorite art here is John Byrne's. But the other artists, you know, they stick with it. You know, they were not that bad. Here you got Ron Wilson a legend, African American artist. He's a legend. He did the thing for a couple of years. He did his classic run of the thing, and he's here. Love the way he does the art. Love his classic depiction. In many ways, Ron he copies some of the art of, in this case, Jack Kirby. A lot of people follow Jack Kirby's style. It is something so natural, I suppose, for artists to really follow their heroes, and they do it. And you can see that interaction. You can see that the reference in the art. Nobody can be like Jack Kirby, that's for sure, and no one will ever be. But definitely a lot of artists, they follow in their footsteps. There's nothing wrong with that. The same way when you think about Jim Lee, he have always said that one of his heroes growing up was, in this case, John Byrne. And definitely you can see that influence in his art. So this is the first issue, as you can see, first dynamic double-size issue. But this time, as you can see, there is a lot of pages already. Alpha Flight was around for almost 4 years. So it was introduced in 1979, 1978, and then by 1984, that's when he got the opportunity to create the run. Actually, in San Diego Comic Con 1982, where they say, yeah, we're going to run it, and they give the green light to John Byrne to create the story, to create his own run. And he took it. He did whatever he wanted to do. And going back to what I was saying, the difference of the problem that John was having, not that I would say the problem, but the difficulty or the challenge was that he was creating stories and trying to stay true to the vision of the original creators for Fantastic Four. He did changes to the Fantastic Four that were important for the time, but it didn't necessarily mean that he was really reinventing the wheel. He just went back to the beginning and really reapplied the same stories in the same setting, and he gave it a little more maturity to these characters with the Fantastic Four. With the X-Men, he was, working with Chris Claremont. He was pretty much working the vision of Chris, and they had some challenges there too, because sometimes he wanted to go in a different route, and that goes back to that force that John Byrne has. Like, he not only is a penciler, but he's a creator. He wants to have control of his creation, and so I think he was boxed in. So when he was given the opportunity to do Alpha Flight, he was able to experiment with these characters. And he took a lot of inspiration. Many of these characters that you can see with the Guardian, with Heather, his wife, and all of them, they have great similitudes or, similarities to a lot of the characters on Fantastic Four and the X-Men, on things that he did prior, that he was doing on the side. He was able to bring these characters like Puck into the picture that technically is like a dwarf version of Wolverine, but a bit more smarter, not as dry as Wolverine, but it has the same sense of Wolverine, at least the Wolverine of that era, during that time. Not as dark and murky as he became later in later years, but definitely he was able to experiment with them and create that setting that definitely defined the Alpha Flight. He was able to be free of those chains and really work with them, and he was fantastic. My favorite character has always been Puck on the Alpha Flight. Love Puck. It's I don't know, he's just a lovable character. I love the way he's depicted. And here's the origin story, like I was telling you, the excerpts that were on the other issues, everything. This is the origin story, of course, of the Guardian, Vindicator. Pretty cool. He creates his own suit. Something that John did is that he was able to really play a lot of things, talk about politics, talk about social issues, talk about even some sexual themes. He talked about all these objects during that time. He still followed the standards because the Code of Authority is still there, but he's able to explore some areas and push in some different instances and really explore the inner parts of these characters. And I can say one thing, if you follow John Byrne's work, if you really know the Fantastic Four, you have read a lot of stuff that he read, he brings this kind of soap operas into his art. You get to see these creations with a lot of drama. There's a lot of drama going on. Yeah, and this, you can say that's always been the case with comics, but he's able to really do it. Like, there are twisted situations. There's, love triangle situations that has to do with emotional baggage, the child trauma. All of those things are part of the story. The Snowbird, Shaman, love these characters. And he does that. And you can see another one here, dealings with suicide, dealings with all of that. He's dealing with all of that. The multiple personalities of Aurora, all of that, punishment, and a lot of things. He's dealing with a lot of really issues that are more mature and level, and definitely it's something that he explored through Alpha Flight. Love this one too. Now it goes back to number 2. My interest with Alpha Flight started in 1990. It was actually 1990 when there was a run of the Avengers by, it was written by Fabian Nicieza and Paul Ryan, and who I forgot who else. And it's a crossover between the Avengers. They come, there was in this case a submarine that is hijacked by some Russian separatists or some Russian, in this case terrorists. So I would say the People's Protectorate, which is kind of like the Avengers of at that time Russia, the USSR, they come to try to save the submarine and take those prisoners, in this case those terrorists, taken prisoners. And of course the Avengers come to the rescue. They're in Canada, so they're fighting with them. Then of course the Atlanteans come, so it becomes a big mess. And ultimately, because they're in Canada, the Alpha Flight intervenes. And that was, I would say, the first time that I found Alpha Flight so cool as a team. And it was not the original team. So this was written by Fabian Nicieza. Love it. It was, to me, it was like, it really piqued my attention. I wanted to know more about Alpha Flight. It was a very nice run. It was a very small couple of issues, but it was cool. And the art was cool by Paul Ryan and I think Bevins. I think that was the name of the other artist. But it was fantastic. It was great. And that piqued my attention, and I wanted to know more about Alpha Flight. And that's when I went to start looking for those comics. This is actually something that you can find on one of the Fantastic Four omnibuses. So it's here. Alpha Flight has been dissected, transformed, changed, renewed. People have died. People have been, brought back to life. So all of those changes, I always find this kiss very strange. This love triangle thing. But the way he's holding her, it's just like, okay, that's a very uncomfortable way to kiss. You know what I mean? Now, I love this one. This is a Puck story. And in this one, he's fighting technically a drug ring. He's fighting some people that are selling drugs, and they're stealing drugs from the hospital. And I love the way he moves, like the way they portray his movement and when he fights. It makes him such a cool character. And definitely he's a short thing, but man, he is fun. And I love him. And I always love him. Now, in this story, we have another one, is Snowblind, and this is for Snowbird. Pretty cool, another story. This is the thing, like I was telling you, there's an exploration and constant exploration of characters. And it's something that is really refreshing. There are dark moments in this story. Like, for example, this one. I love this cover. Aurora looks so pretty there. Aurora, dealing with her multiple personalities, from the nice girl to the bad girl to whatever else comes in between. You always see these big differences in her. And this issue is dealing with those things. It is dealing with a lot of things that definitely are a little bit on the weird side, but also on the extreme side. He has mentioned also, and during that time, that he was already doing John Paul. He envisioned John Paul to be homosexual, to be gay, but he didn't get really the chance to express it. But you can see some of the hints throughout the story, very little hints that, of course, later on was pushed out by other creators and all that. But you can see some of that. He was already working and exploring ideas, and he was actually working on those ideas, and that's an interesting thing. I wouldn't say that I'm too keen of a lot of the stuff he did with the story. This is definitely John being, on a laid back position. He is more laid back with the stories. And you can see, like, for example, these guys get pretty much chopped to death, get killed. And they portray it this way, which things like that you don't get to see as much. And, you didn't get to see a lot of that stuff in comics during that time, or, he was pushing some of those things. I don't know, he got away with a lot of stuff, but it's because he was so popular. People wanted John Byrne. John Byrne was not only a name, people wanted to see John. They care about John. They care about the way he did things. And you can see it through the way he did a lot of stuff here. Back in the day, before even Photoshop existed, they did this way where they kind of translucid the city, and they kind of draw on top of it, and they make those landscapes. John has mentioned that he never was a fan of drawing landscape or cityscape, but man, I love the way he was portrayed. New York City is portrayed really nicely throughout the stories, and also a lot of the Canadian landscape. Very good. Like, look at you can see right here the cityscape. So this is Vancouver. I think, yeah, it is. And love that. There's, John adds so much detail to his art. And this is the difference between him and a lot of artists that came afterward in the 90s. They didn't add as much detail. You can see the Twin Towers. I always have good memories of this when I see New York City and I see the Twin Towers. It brings back memories. Look at this. Love the way, you can see Manhattan right there, the World Trade Center, all of that. Here you can see Box. And I don't know, this is so cool, and the story has its dark moments. I can tell you there are a lot of dark moments in this story too. And you see in a moment you're going to see probably the death of the Guardian, the Vindicator. Although in comics no one ever dies. They come back. There's always a way that they survive. They do it. Wild Child, all of these characters are part of the Omega Flight. Part of the story, you will know that there were different teams on their Operation H, which is definitely the Department H, which is the department that created Alpha Flight. But they got the Beta Flight. They got different groups, for different powerful teams. Of course, the big one was Alpha Flight. But they after Department H disbanded, some of them, they left and they became villains, so they have to fight it. And this is the reason what happened here. He just fight the villains. He gets severely damaged, he's sued, and ultimately he explodes. He dies, and his wife, Heather, watches him die. So this was definitely a shocking moment then. Now, you can see in this story, of course, the follow-up after the death of in this case, Hudson. You can see pretty much Heather with all the people. I love how dark the moment is, how silent it is. There's no voices, just sadness. Definitely very different. It looks a lot like, like Miller's art and the way that it's depicted, the way it is done. Very dark moments. And of course, Wolverine is there. Love that. Love the depiction. Love the silent moment and what is really happening there. And of course, this is just a bad dream, a nightmare. That's what it's called, nightmare. But here they're dealing with the loss, dealing with the consequences of it, of course, and trying to becoming the leader of the group, and all of that. And you can see that. What I like about that, one of the things that John did, and he did a lot, and this is Spider-Man. When he was back in the 80s and with a black suit with Black Cat, I always loved that that relationship they had. I always loved Black Cat. She was the bad girl that everybody loved. But definitely, when that time, he was exploring. One thing that you can tell about John is that he loves strong women, and he explores that with every female character he has. Women that at first don't feel so secure about themselves, but they become very strong. And the women that he creates are so powerful in comparison to the other counterparts of all the artist depictions. And you can see there's a lot of strong women in this group. And actually the most powerful characters in the group, the most powerful characters in Alpha Flight are women. Aurora is very powerful. Snowbird is super powerful. Heather becomes the leader. She's not secure of herself. She's kind of like an image of, kind of like the same thing as he did with Invisible Woman. And not so sure about herself, but she regains that strength. She becomes very powerful, and she finds that strength. And of course, she becomes then the Guardian. She takes the mantle of the Guardian, then the Vindicator. But you can see that the dealings. You can see her really being a strong figure, and she's dealing with the loss. She's struggling, and she's becoming strong. But you can see that it's something that John did through all the art that he ever did, is that really portraying women that are very strong, like Marina. She's very strong, she's very powerful, and she's dangerous as well. All these characters have strengths and weaknesses, and they're human, and they are definitely relatable. And that's one of the reasons why people love Alpha Flight, because the characters were so relatable, and you can get to see that and experience that throughout the story. Yes, he was free to do whatever he wanted to do with the story. He explored the characters in deeper ways. He explored the relationships, the love, their fears, their doubts. He explored all of those aspects, what make the characters so interesting. Like the X-Men and the Alpha Flight, now how they met and what happened later. So this is going back to what we saw on the original introduction of the characters and on the X-Men. It's almost the same. It's almost the same cover, but there's some variations, and it kind of explains some of the things that happened there. which is super cool. Again, I love the way John does a Wolverine. Love the way he draws Wolverine. Very nice. Very cool depiction of the character. So it kind of uses some of the same panels, like this one, but there are also some of these are panels that came from the other one. But then it gives us what happened when he disappears, where did he go, and all of that. So all of that is kind of plays a part. So it really connects it well, and I really like that. Definitely very cool. And as you can see right there, Heather already trying the suit. She's thinking about it. So you can see she's becoming the leader. And you can see how she's going through all of that. Now, Talisman. Talisman was the daughter of, in this case, Shaman. And that's another character that was introduced then, which is pretty cool. I love that. I love how Canadian the book is. You know, it's not, you know, and you have to always think of this. I have a lot of friends in Canada. I love my Canadian friends. They're fantastic people. My experience with Canadians have always been good. You know, sometimes you find somebody that it's not as cool, but for the most part, you always want to find Canadians very down-to-earth people, very nice people, well-educated, people that really care a lot about others, you know, and they care about the environment. They're people that love the outdoors, love the art, but also very talented people. And when you come to see the list of comic book artists that are influential in North America, that have been part of America. Not only that, actors, actresses, producers, people that work in the industry of the arts and any industry of the arts, there's a lot of them that come from Canada. And you might say, well, it's because it's just right next to us. Yeah, it is right next to us. But when you think of it, the population, you know, how many people they have in comparison to the US, they have a smaller population in comparison to us. But even though they have a small population, per capita, they have a lot of very talented people. And it's amazing, you know, and many of them love this suit, love this way right here. Besides all of that, they have a strong influence in comics and in any other arts. They are very talented. And I love how Canadian this book is. And definitely John gets to really praise his roots, and you can see he plays in all the different towns. You know, all the characters, they have Canadian roots, you know, with the Indian nations, all of that. They something so Canadian, and that's one of the reasons why Alpha Flight is so recognized in Canada and so loved by a lot of Canadians, because it's their team. You know, Avengers always recognized as America's team. You know, Captain America is an American team. All the teams in America are American. Every comic that we know, Spider-Man, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the West Coast Avengers, all of them, they all have roots in America, and they're very American. But, you know, the Canadians, they get to get Alpha Flight, and a lot of people love it. And not just that, there were a lot of people that were critical about some of the depictions of Canadians in Canada. But Americans love, you know, Alpha Flight because it was so new, so different than anything that we knew. And that's one of the reasons why Alpha Flight was very popular, and it was popular for many, many years. Didn't stop publishing the first run until, 1999? That's when it stopped running. And of course, it's been depicted over and over again. Here's Box. I always love this character. Really love the character. A guy that doesn't have legs. You know, he lost his legs. He's an engineer. I love his dad. I love actually the second version, of the second person that wore this case, the suit. But all of this, and he's a chubby guy, all of that. So he's playing with so many different areas. That is definitely a love thing. You know, it's a love thing to Canada. It's a love thing to the Canadian spirit. In this issue, he's fighting some Loki and some of the Asgardian stuff, which is interesting. So this is the thing, you know, he's exploring ideas. He's exploring villains. There's a lot of cool villains in this story. Some, they're not so cool, but, you know, some stories are better than others. But definitely he's just, you know, turning his guard down. He's just exploring ideas. He's playing with this. You know, he's not, you know, being determined because, oh, you got to do this way, you got to do it that way. This is new territory, and he's exploring the territory with all these characters. And yes, many of these characters are the variations of other characters in the Marvel universe, but they're his characters, and they are there just to be themselves and to explore ideas. And that's what makes it so great. Love this one right here. No colors there. Very interesting. So there's a lot of exploration a lot of mystic things happening, a lot of battles that they have to confront. Now, this is their return, of course, of the Vindicator, or, he returns, so partially. Something that I'm not going to really tell you because you need to explore that. And there's a lot of things that are happening. As you know, in comics, no one ever dies. There's a lot of things happening within the whole thing. He returns, but he's improved in many ways, and he is just part human and part robot, so he's a cyber. I would say from all those reads that I got from all the omnibuses that are different than the norm, I think this is one of my favorite ones. I like it more, first of all, because it's John Byrne. I love the way he did it, but secondly, because it's a very new team. When you come to read this for the first time, and I can tell you this, if you have never read this, and you come to read for the first time, you are surprised by what is happening here. It is fresh, it is new, and I think it's an interesting part. So if you are looking for something new and different, definitely this is something that it really will, I would say, give you something totally different than what you're accustomed to. Now, in this story, you can see this is the Incredible Hulk, and actually this is Mike Mignola, and this is the stories by Bill Mantlo. Bill Mantlo took over the writing after John left, but here you can see a very young Mignola, and he's doing the art, and he's doing it with Incredible Hulk. But definitely interesting. I'd like to see, I love Mignola's art. I love the way he has matured as an artist over time. He has a very peculiar art, and here you can see that he's experimenting a little bit with it. You can see the hints of it, but of course, that didn't change him 3 years later, but definitely love the way he does things, and here's pretty much working on some of that stuff, and some of his style is coming through. So definitely love that this is included here. Also, this run 1998, the X-Men Alpha Flight, again, is just a 2-issue that it goes back and really explains events that happen in between. This is John Cassaday is writing this, and he's also being the artist, and Ben Rapp is also writing with him. But it's interesting. I wouldn't say that this was a must-have on this story. It just explains some events, not necessarily on the best way possible. It's more modern. I really don't care. I'm glad that it gave it to us because it's always good to have some art, some stuff, so you don't, you kind of keep track of everything and what's really happening. And it's good, it's good. But I wouldn't say that I was, oh, wow, this is super impressive and this is something that is a must read. And of course, now you got all the extras. You got some covers, some, excerpts that are pretty nice, explain a lot of things in the story. I love this. And an interview with John Byrne, which is very, very nice. Love that. Teams team up, X-Men and Alpha Flight. That's another one. So you get a lot of excerpts, a lot of cool stuff, a lot of cool covers. Very nice stuff here. Love this one too. Love this one. Love Puck. Love this pinup by Ken Stacey. Very nice. This is another portfolio pinup by John Byrne. Pretty cool. So you get all Alpha Flight, some of the designs, very, very cool designs. Love the depiction, love the stances. So cool. Classic X-Men, that's a nice cover. More covers, very cool. A lot of classic X-Men covers. Wendigo. Pretty cool. In conclusion, do I recommend this book? I would say yes. However, and I'm going to be very honest with you, I don't think it's for everyone. I think it's for those, first of all, those that grew up with John Byrne. If you're a John Byrne fan, this is a must read. This is a must have. If you're looking for something different, if you're the type of person that love eclectic and different, and you love to kind of dive yourself into new stories, definitely this is something worth checking out. He's treading in different areas that they probably might be considered a bit relevant now, but also a bit on the edge. He is really going on the edge. He's really pushing the envelope with some of the stories, with some of the characters and their background and their development. But all of that really makes a really interesting, very refreshing story. Once again, I want to say thank you for spending the time for watching my videos, for going through the reviews. Stay tuned for more book reviews. Definitely, I like to spend time with them. The reviews are not really short, but because I want to concentrate on talking about the artist, but also talking about the art. And ultimately, it is your choice to really make the decision if you like it or not. So once again, God bless my friends, and I'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.